At my wife's funeral, everyone cried, but I burst out laughing. People thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I know what I saw. I remember the moment my world first flipped upside down. The first time I saw Emily, she was standing on a wobbly ladder in the bookstore where I worked, reaching for a dusty old novel on the top shelf. She nearly fell, and I rushed over to catch her. Instead of being embarrassed, she laughed. That was Emily. She could find humor in anything, even dangling from a ladder with a stranger steadying her. Her laughter was bright and melodic, instantly putting me at ease. From that day on, life with Emily was full of laughter and warmth. We married 2 years later on a rainy spring morning. In typical fashion, she even turned a mishap into a joke, splashing mud on her own white shoes just to calm my nerves on our wedding day. We were inseparable, always sharing a secret smile. Our days were filled with little traditions, like silly Friday night sock dances and whispered prayers of thanks each night that we had found each other. On our 10th anniversary, I gave her a gold locket engraved with always. She teared up and joked, "Now you're stuck with me, always." She wore that locket every day, and she never took off her wedding ring either. We were happy, imperfect, silly happy. But life has a way of kicking you in the teeth just when you think the future is bright. The first sign was a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. Then the weight loss. We tried to laugh it off at first. She joked she was finally fitting into her college jeans again. But when she fainted on our kitchen floor one night, I knew something was really wrong. The diagnosis came a week later, a rare, aggressive cancer. Stage 4. The doctors were gentle but blunt. It had spread too far. They gave her 6 months at best. 6 months. The words didn't feel real. I remember sitting in the sterile oncologist's office, the world around me muffled like I was underwater. Emily squeezed my hand and cracked a shaky smile. "Well," she said quietly, "I always wanted to retire early." Even then, she was making jokes, trying to keep me from falling apart, as if she wasn't the one dying. That was my wife, brave, even when she was terrified. I could see the fear in her eyes in those rare moments when she thought I wasn't looking. Late at night, I'd wake up to find her silently crying, staring at that gold locket in her hand. When she noticed me, she'd wipe her tears and whisper, "It's okay. Go back to sleep." But it wasn't okay. Neither of us slept much after that. We fought the cancer with everything modern medicine and desperate hope could offer. Chemo, radiation, experimental drugs, you name it, we tried it. She lost her hair, then her appetite, then so much weight I could carry her like a child. Even in the darkest moments, she joked weakly that I'd better not fall for someone else after she was gone. I'd cover her ears and insist I wasn't hearing it. She was going to beat this. She just gave me a sad, knowing smile. She managed to hang on for 8 months, 2 months longer than expected, before the inevitable came. In the end, the cancer was merciless. Her organs were failing. One rainy night, we found ourselves in the hospital for what we both sensed would be the last time. I stayed by her side in that dimly lit room, listening to the soft beeps of the heart monitor, holding her hand and feeling the frail squeeze of her fingers. She was so weak she could barely whisper, but she still managed to make one final joke. I had my head bowed, choking back tears, and she murmured, "Hey, I bet you're glad you'll get the bed to yourself again, huh?" A tearful laugh escaped me as I kissed her knuckles. Even on the brink of death, Emily wanted to make me smile. She kept hold of my hand as her smile faded, and in a voice so faint I almost missed it, she whispered, "I love you. And this isn't goodbye, okay?" I nodded desperately, pressing her fingers to my lips. Around 3 a.m., I felt her hand go still and cold in mine. The monitor flatlined with a long, awful beep that seemed to go on forever. "No, no, no." I remember pleading, as if I could bargain with the universe. Nurses rushed in. They gently pulled me back, laid her hand on her chest, and began the motions of confirming what I couldn't accept. I stood there in a daze, watching a doctor shine a light in her lifeless eyes, check for a pulse that wasn't there, and finally shake his head. She was gone. My beautiful, bright Emily was gone. I felt hollow. I felt rage. I felt disbelief. All at once, I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that they were wrong, that any second she'd gasp and come back to me. Instead, I stood there numb as the staff offered condolences. Someone was talking about next steps and paperwork, asking me if I wanted a moment alone with her. I did, or I thought I did, but I was afraid. Afraid to face the reality of her body without her spirit. My legs trembled as I approached her bedside. Her face was so peaceful, almost smiling, as if she'd just drifted to sleep mid-laugh at one of her own jokes. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and noticed how thin she'd gotten, like a ghost of herself. I leaned down and pressed my forehead to hers, tears blurring my vision. "This isn't goodbye," I whispered, voice cracking. I couldn't bring myself to say goodbye. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I slid the gold locket from around her neck and closed it in my fist, promising to keep it safe. My eyes fell to her left hand. Her wedding ring was missing, leaving her finger bare. A nurse quickly murmured that her personal effects would be secured and returned to me later. I wanted to object, to ask for the ring right then, but my voice wouldn't work. Shock and exhaustion held me in place. The rest of that night passed in a haze. Numbly, I signed the papers to donate her body to the research institute, just as she'd wanted. By dawn, they told me her body was already gone to the institute. I never even got to see her one last time outside that hospital room. The day after, I drifted through our silent home like a ghost. Everything smelled of her. The shampoo on her pillow, the coffee she'd brewed. Everywhere were little reminders of her. A dog-eared novel on the nightstand, her knitting on the couch. I couldn't bear to move a thing. Eventually, I collapsed onto our bed, clutching her pillow, and slept an endless, grief-stricken sleep. When I woke up, I expected to feel some relief that her suffering was over, that I'd survived the worst night of my life. But all I felt was that something was off. Something subtle that I couldn't name, beyond just the fog of grief. At first, I thought it was just shock, but a gnawing feeling in my gut told me there was more to it. The funeral was a blur of black dresses, somber faces, and the sickly sweet smell of lilies. A drizzly gray sky hung over the cemetery, as if even the heavens were mourning. I stood under a green canvas awning by her casket, though it was empty, symbolic, since her body was never returned from the institute. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching a widower in an ill-fitting suit play his part. People came up one by one to hug me, whispering words that evaporated as soon as they left their lips. She was an angel. She's in a better place. Stay strong. I nodded along, but inside I felt nothing. Just a dull, muted ache. Her best friend, Mia, had helped arrange the memorial since I could barely function. Mia stood beside me now, squeezing my arm every so often to remind me to breathe. I vaguely recall stepping forward to say a few words to the small gathering. My voice sounded distant and broken as I talked about Emily's kindness, her courage, her laughter. But even as I spoke, I knew the woman I was describing was only a shadow of the real Emily. The canned eulogy didn't capture her irreverent humor, her teasing wit, the way she could turn even a funeral into a punchline. It didn't sound like her at all. I faltered, my eyes burning. Mia gently took over and finished reading the little speech we had cobbled together. It was a serviceable eulogy, I suppose, but it felt hollow. After that, the minister asked if anyone else would like to share a memory. A few friends and family members stepped up. I barely heard them, lost in my own world of pain. My eyes fell on a photo of Emily atop the casket, laughing on a breezy beach day, hair flying. That single picture captured her spirit better than any words we spoke. My vision blurred with tears. Out of the silence, a cheerful, whistling melody floated from the speakers. It grew louder and clearer, an upbeat, utterly out-of-place song for a funeral. I froze, recognizing it instantly. That song. Emily's song. The one she had always joked should play at her funeral. Always look on the bright side of life. A shocked murmur rippled through the attendees. Some looked around, puzzled, as the Johnny tune continued to play over the silent graveyard. My heart pounded. I could practically hear Emily's voice in my head, that mischievous tone. I told you I'd make you laugh when I'm gone. And against all reason, against all the crushing sorrow inside me, I felt the corners of my mouth twitch. A strangled sound burst out of me, half laugh, half sob. I clamped a hand over my mouth, but it was too late. Laughter was spilling out of me, wild and hysterical. I was laughing at my wife's funeral. Heads turned. The mourners stared in shock. Mia's hand rested on my back. Her face was torn between concern and something else, as if she, too, was on the verge of laughing or crying. In that moment, I didn't care if they all thought I'd lost my mind. Because for a split second, I swear I could feel Emily there with me, laughing too. It felt like her. That absurd, unexpected song cracked the ice around my heart, and for an instant I could breathe again. But as quickly as it came, my laughter died, leaving me hollow and confused. Who had arranged this? Mia leaned in and whispered. She made me promise to play it. She wanted to leave you laughing. Her words took a moment to sink in. Emily had planned this final joke, one last gift to leave me laughing through the tears. As the song ended, my laughter dissolved into sobs. The ceremony concluded in a blur, and mourners drifted away beneath a sea of black umbrellas. They all thought the chapter was closed. They were wrong. For me, it was just the beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Emily's voice from her final moments. This isn't goodbye. At the time, I thought she was just comforting me. But now those words echoed with new significance. She never actually said goodbye. The next morning I started making calls. The hospital had no record of Emily's missing phone or wedding ring. The staff sounded puzzled. And the doctor who pronounced her dead? No one by the name Dr. Beck existed in their system. Perhaps he was a visiting specialist, they suggested. Growing desperate, I phoned the research institute that supposedly took her body, only to be told they had no record of any donation under Emily's name. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. That evening I sat at our dining table surrounded by stacks of papers, everything from Emily's medical bills to sympathy cards, searching desperately for anything that didn't fit. Then, at the bottom of one pile, I found a folded letter I hadn't noticed before. It was from the hospital, thanking us for considering participation in the St. Agnes Protocol, something we never discussed. Attached was a photocopy of a consent form. My eyes scanned down to the signature line, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Scrawled in black ink was Emily's signature, dated the very night she died. The form was a consent for an experimental treatment trial at the institute. But she couldn't have signed this at that time. She was supposed to be dead. My hands shook. That's when I saw her name on a document she shouldn't have signed. Emily had literally signed her life over to that institute, apparently after she died, in my arms. Everything suddenly clicked. The unfamiliar doctor, the rushed transfer, the missing ring, her strange last words. Emily hadn't really died that night. She had escaped death. And she'd done it behind my back. Heart pounding, I drove straight to Mia's house and pounded on her door. She opened it with red, puffy eyes, as if she'd been crying too. I thrust the copied consent form toward her. She's alive, isn't she? I choked out. Mia's eyes overflowed with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wanted to tell you, but she made me swear not to. She said it was the only way. I was trembling from head to toe. Where is she? I demanded, my voice cracking. Take me to her. Please. Mia nodded, already grabbing her coat and car keys. She's safe, she said softly. I'll take you to her. Emily was lying in a hospital bed, alive. Alive. Her eyes were closed, and she looked pale and fragile under the fluorescent lights, but she was breathing steadily. And 4-drip hummed beside her. I stepped forward, barely daring to breathe, afraid that if I made a sound this illusion would shatter. Mia gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze and slipped out, leaving us alone. My knees nearly buckled as I approached the bed. Emily, I croaked. My voice woke her. Her eyelids fluttered open, and those familiar gray eyes found mine. For a second, confusion clouded her face. She must have been in a deep sleep. Then recognition dawned, and a tear rolled down her cheek. Hey you, she whispered, voice raspy. I fell into the chair by her bedside, grabbing her hand in both of mine as a sob tore through me. Her hand, warm, soft, alive, squeezed back weakly. You're here, I managed to say through the lump in my throat. My tears splashed on our interlaced fingers. On her finger, I felt the cool metal of her wedding ring. She still had it. Of course she did. I let out a broken laugh, the kind that comes from pure relief. I'm here, Emily whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I put you through that. Fresh tears brimmed in her eyes. I shushed her softly and pressed her hand to my lips. You're here, I repeated, as if saying it enough times would convince me this was real. We clung to each other, sobbing. I buried my face in her shoulder, breathing in her familiar vanillian soap scent, and felt her heart beating against mine. The world started turning again. When we finally pulled back, I had 1,000 questions tangled on my tongue. Emily seemed to read them on my face. I had to, she whispered. It was my one chance. The treatment was so experimental, and I might not survive it, so they had to make it look like I died. I couldn't tell you. You'd never have let me go. And if it failed, I couldn't stand to break your heart with false hope. I wiped her tears away. Do you have any idea what kind of hell I've been through? I choked out. I'm so sorry, she cried. I thought I was sparing you pain, but I only caused more. I hugged her carefully, minding the foreline. We'll figure all that out later, I murmured. Right now, I'm just so happy you're here and alive. Nothing else matters. She let out a soft, shaky laugh. I kissed her forehead, and for the first time in forever I felt pure, unfiltered hope. We stayed like that for a long time, foreheads pressed together, whispering the same, always, and forever, promises we made on our wedding day. In that stark hospital room, I felt my shattered heart begin to mend. In that moment, I remembered how I had laughed through tears at her funeral, while everyone else cried. That laughter had been born of pain and disbelief. Now our laughter mingled with tears of joy, and the contrast stole my breath away. Everyone cried that day, but this time, I laughed, because she lived.